Mark Hunter, also known as the Sales Hunter and author of Mind of Sales. Thanks for joining the podcast.
Thank you for having me. We're going to have a great conversation
I
talking about
believe
something
so.
I like.
Yeah, I think we both are pretty passionate about this topic. And as I mentioned earlier, this is a three-part episode on hunting, prospecting. And it started because a friend of mine who's a headhunter, I'm in the MedTech space, MedTech manufacturing, contract manufacturing for medical devices. And he said, Steve, he's trying to help a client of his out. And he says, where's all the hunters? Where did they go? There's all a bunch of order takers out there now. So I said, that's interesting. Let me call up my friend, Dominic Testa, who did the first part of this three-part episode. And Dominic's a perennial sales. He just kills it every year. A lot of the customers that he has now that developed, generated millions and millions in revenues are from his early prospecting strategies and contacts. So he had a great podcast, and I asked with him, what happened? So I said, let's talk about it in a podcast. So that was released a few weeks ago, and I just recorded with Tony Blauer, on a fear management expert, on how to overcome some of the anxiety. And then we're going to wrap it up with you, Mark, to talk about, high performance pitching.
Love it. Let's dive in. Where would we like to start?
If we can change it a little bit, I'm going to change this up a little bit.
Yeah.
I listened to a podcast that you did recently with Meredith Elliott Powell.
Yes.
And I think it's fitting because the topic was unresponsive prospects. What do you do? And I gave a story and with Dominic on the first episode, how I gave a salesperson a task, 10 target accounts, the contacts. I gave him a little pitch deck and everything. Reach out to these folks. A couple of months later, I'm like, hey, what happened? He's like, well, nobody got back to me. That's a starting point, dude. Right. So can you talk a little bit about, give us a synopsis on that conversation that you had with Meredith about unresponsive prospects?
Yes, that conversation happened on a podcast I do, Sales Logic. And what it comes down to is you got to back up the bus a little bit, because if you know you could help someone, you owe it to them to reach out to them. If you know you can help someone, you owe it to them to reach out to them. But like your salesperson, those 10 well, they never got back to me. I bet that salesperson probably only reached out once or twice, and that was it. And that's the challenge. Here's the deal. The customer doesn't know you can help them. The example I love to say is this: if I have a problem, and you can ask my kids will tell you that dad's got a lot of problems, and I knew that you could help me, I would want you to reach out to me. But the problem is I don't know who you are. So I'm going to naturally blow you off. But you need to stay in the game. The biggest challenge that salespeople have is they don't stay in the game long enough. I closed a deal about 8 or 9 months ago, and it took me over 56 contacts, 56 touches, and they're all in my CRM system. 56 touches to get this customer to begin to respond. Now, once we began having a conversation, we closed the deal in about 2 weeks. It was amazing. But I stay in the game, and this is one of the biggest challenges. This is why I'm glad I'm kind of the third part, because you've already had people talk about the mindset and how it is. But here's the deal. Every message you bring has got to bring new value. If I look back through my CRM system, every one of those 56 messages had a different message, different value, different piece. This is key. You can't just sit there and say, hey, I want to bounce this up to the top of your email list. Hey, not sure if you saw this again. Hey, no, you got to bring new value. This is one of the biggest challenges. So what does that mean? That means you've got to know your prospect. You've got to know who you're reaching out to. And this is why I say, stay in your lane. Who is your ideal customer? Who's your ideal customer? Stay in that lane. And you can understand their industry. You can understand their industry, their business, everything that they're doing. And what does it help you do? It allows you to really deliver value. They'll come around to you. It's going to take time, but stay in the game.
Interesting. Excellent feedback on that. I thought I'd start there because it's relative to this whole concept that we're talking about. I appreciate that. And, sometimes in some scenarios I've been in where a salesperson that worked for me has a target account, and you can't get a dialogue. You can't get in touch with the target. Hey, send them an email, send he or she text messages, LinkedIn messages. What should I do next? And sometimes it's nothing also though, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's this whole thing. I'm going to stay engaged with you
Yeah.
as long as the size of the opportunity is worthwhile. In other words, this one, I stayed in the game 56 touches over the course of about 18 months because it was a sizable opportunity. I would not do that with somebody who was going to be a one-off sale. So in other words, the level of your stay in the game, so to speak, is commensurate to the size of the opportunity, the value. Now, the size of the opportunity may come a couple different ways because it may come from A, they can deliver revenue to you right now. 2, they can deliver revenue to you over a longer period of time. 3, they may be a leading voice and you land them as an account, you can land others as an account, or they may be a fast growing account that if you can just get in the door now, small, but boy, they're growing and I'll be with them. So there's a number of different reasons. But here's the other piece that salespeople drop the ball on. They love going out with the method that they're comfortable with.
Yeah.
Email. I'm just gonna email them. Hey, let me tell you something. There's this thing called the telephone. It does work. The telephone. Oh, but nobody picks up the telephone. Nobody picks up the telephone, says the person who does not want to make a phone call. Let me tell you something. I get a lot of great phone calls. Friday afternoons. Well, hold it. Friday afternoons. Yeah, Friday afternoons. Friday afternoons is when I have found I'm able to connect with people very good because they're in a little more laid back. They're in a little more, they're kind of starting to set themselves up for the weekend. And I can call people and suddenly I have conversations. See, there's plenty of means, plenty of methods in terms of how to reach a prospect, but bring new value every time.
Excellent. And I guess one of the key words there in what we talked about is qualifying those leads. Like you mentioned a bunch of different scenarios why you might keep going or you might stop. And I guess it comes down to qualifying.
Yeah, you know what? And that's a key piece. And who is the person that you're dealing with? And this is the other thing. We're seeing more and more, and this has been going on for the last 5 or 10 years, more and more decision makers getting involved in every decision. And I'm saying just over the last 6 or 8 months, we've almost seen a doubling in the number of decision makers. If it maybe took 3 or 4, now it's taking 7 or 8. Mm-hmm. So you better be prepared that when you're prospecting, you're not touching just one person at that company, but you're touching 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people in that company.
Yeah.
And here's the deal. It's not procurement. Procurement is the business prevention department. Because remember, what is procurement? They are in place to get the cheapest, lowest price, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You got to go to the decision maker. You got to go to who's going to benefit from you. You're in the MedTech space there. Who's going to benefit from what it is that you want to sell? Who are the people that are going to be using it, implementing it? That's where you want to have the conversation. Don't start out with procurement.
Yeah.
Because again, you're going to lose that war.
The barrier.
Oh, it's a huge barrier.
Roadblock number 1.
And 2 and 3.
Yes. Yeah. Excellent. Yeah. So let's get into high performance pitching. Just an example of a scenario. All right. You did a lot of work to prospect. You got a good lead. You took care of your anxiety. You did some of the tools that Tony talked about. Now you have an opportunity, right, to get maybe in front of a CEO for 20 minutes. Very busy person. How do you optimize that time and craft a high performance pitch?
Yeah, here's the situation. Go back to how I started the show. I asked you a question. You know what? Here's the whole thing. If you go into any kind of a pitch, hi, let me tell you who I am, da-da-da-da-da. That is a capabilities presentation. And the 90s are calling. They want their capabilities presentation back. They've already done research on you. Nobody gets a meeting with anybody without them having done research on you. So that's off the table. You've got to come in with a question. You've got to come in with some piece of information, insight relevant to their business, relative to their industry. And it isn't like, oh, how's business going? Hey, again, they're expecting you to have done that research ahead of time.
Yeah.
So what you're going to be asking them is, hey, How are you confronting this? How are you dealing with this? What's happening here? The idea being is I want them to say, why do you ask? What is it? Well, we get to work with companies like yours that have solved this same challenge. I'm curious. How's it, da 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 da.
Yeah.
And you've got to lead with this question, because here's the whole thing. The magic formula I found with prospecting is asking people for their input, asking people for their opinion. Because again, they're going to share it. They're going to share it. And if they aren't willing to share it, then guess what? They're probably not your customer. Now, again, doesn't mean you don't keep trying. You're going to keep trying. But I have found this. I've got to come back to you multiple times, asking you different questions about your industry, asking you different questions about your process, your procedures, all of these various things. I may compliment you on something, but the tighter and the more relevant I make the message, the better off I am. Now, here's the piece. This happens in emails all the time, or happens on phone calls. A phone call. Hi, how's the weather there? How's your day going? Oh, come on. Anytime I pick up the phone and somebody calls me and says that, I know it's a salesperson.
Yeah.
I don't care. And you know what? You don't care either. You're just asking this just to somehow get over your nervousness.
Yeah.
Go right in with the question. Same thing in an email. Don't start off the email saying, hi, I'd like to introduce myself.
Yeah.
I get an email like that.
Yeah.
You're deleted. It's gone.
Yeah.
Period. I can introduce myself later on in the email, later on in the phone call, but I got to get you right away. Period.
I love that, because there's in a way there's two ways to look at that. This small talk when you first get introduced to a customer. I see you went to University of Mississippi, and my brother-in-law went there, played college. Tell me, it's a waste of time.
Yeah, because you can bring that up a couple minutes into the call.
Right.
That's great. That's absolutely terrific. That's fantastic. I will do that all the time.
Yeah.
But that's not, they didn't want to hear somebody call that they knew your brother at the University of Mississippi.
Yeah.
They don't, that's not what they woke up this morning looking to find out. But again, I'll bring that up later on. And if I get a comment back on it, great, I probably will. And that's absolutely terrific. Now, that brings up something very interesting, because the art of prospecting is about knowing how to follow up, knowing how to remain engaged. And one of the things I love doing is, if I can get you to share with me some piece of personal information, I can come back and use it next time I talk to you on the phone. Hey, remember last time we were talking about the University of Mississippi? I just saw where they did X. And again, I'm linking. Linking is so critical when it comes to prospecting. If I can get you on the phone, get you in an email response, anything, and you share with me just one piece of information, I'm going to link that to my next call with you, the next conversation. Because what does that do? It demonstrates that I am listening. It demonstrates that I know you. It demonstrates that I value your opinion.
Excellent. There's a saying, people buy from people they trust. And in building, delivering a pitch, I think, what are some of the tactics or strategies to build trust during that final pitch?
Yeah, here's the thing. Trust is built before you make the pitch.
Yeah.
You have to. And this is where I always say, people say, well, let me get the price out on the table right away. No, there is no price to be shared until you understand the outcome that the customer is looking for. So what I do is I come in a non-threatening manner, and I'm going to sit there and I'm going to ask you about your business. I'm going to ask you about the industry. Try to, in other words, I want you to see me as a peer. Yeah. I had a prospecting call this morning, the exact same thing. Now we always practice what I call BAM FAM, book a meeting from a meeting. And that's what I did. I was on the phone with a CRO, and we booked another meeting for this coming Friday. Did that absolutely very intentional. And I didn't talk at all about my proposal. We talked about her business, talked about the industry, where it's going, and we created a next step. Now, coming out of the next call, I will have begun to achieve a level of trust, because I can't develop trust on one call.
Right.
But if I can develop trust over a couple of calls, now I can begin to put my solution on the table. Because here's the thing, if I don't know what you're looking for, what gives me any right to sit here and throw a solution on the table? Because I don't know if, people who ask me, hey, what's your price? I go, you know what? I don't want to see you waste your money.
Yeah.
And I'm not even sure if I'm the right fit. Can I ask you a few questions? Because I want to make sure you make the right decision. And customers will always say, well, customers all sure, because I'm treating them with respect. I'm treating them with what they feel, is in their best interest.
Now that question is a question that I've always felt a little uncomfortable about. You're at a trade show or something and you're showing something. Well, how much is it? And first of all, I'm really bad at just winging prices. I always get them wrong. So I try never to give a price, but it's like they want some reference point, right?
Yeah.
To get in the ballpark. So, go ahead.
Here's the situation. What happens is salespeople are quick to throw out two prices. Well, it's this to this. It's a range.
Yeah.
The customer only hears the lowest price. That's the only price. They don't hear the upper price.
Yeah.
If somebody is adamant about a price, go, it's usually never more than $100 million or $10 million. and just as you kind of chuckled,
Yeah.
I will throw that out, and 99% of the time people laugh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good one. I'll have to try that one sometime because, like I said, I'm pretty bad at it. And I learned one time I gave a price, and several months later we're in negotiation. Well, you said it was this, and I was way off. And it's like, well, so you put yourself in a jam.
You really do, and we've all done it. And we've all done it because there's this little sense that we want to keep the deal going. We want to keep this going. So we naturally sit here. And here's the thing. Price is a statement of value. And it's not our value. It's the customer's value. There's a reason why two people on the same flight, same airline flight, one person may pay $100 for the ticket. One person may pay $500.
Yeah.
And the person who's paying $500 feels they're getting a great value. And the person who only pays $100 feels they're getting ripped off. Again, it's their frame of reference.
Yeah.
You don't know. It's the customer is the one who has to tell us that.
Excellent. All right. So we talked about a little bit about, building trust, and that takes a while, right? It takes effort to do that. And let's talk a little bit about something that Dominic also talked about in the mindset going into closing one of these high stakes deals.
Yeah, because I'll tell you what, your mindset going into a conversation predetermines the results you get coming out of it. It's absolutely without a doubt. This is why I firmly believe you have to have a very structured way as to how you start the day. And every top performer I've ever worked with, I'll ask them, how do you start your day? And they will rattle off, boom, 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 exactly how they start the day. I ask an average performer or somebody who says they're a good performer.
Yeah.
If they can't clearly articulate how they start the day, they're not a top performer. It really comes down to, and it comes down to this mindset. I know I can help people. I know here in a bit, I'm going to be making some calls to people who I don't know. And I'm jazzed to be making the calls because these are going to be people who I know I can help. And if I can make a difference, I owe it to them. I owe it to them to reach out to them. And it's amazing when you go into a phone call, go into any kind of a conversation like that, you hear better, you listen better, you ask better questions.
Yeah.
Because now it's not commission breath, but you're going in with this whole attitude of really trying to help the customer.
You said something there. I want you to dive into it a little deeper. Commission breath.
We've all been there. We've all been there with commission breath. We've all, where we're racing to try to close the deal and make it happen. But here's what happens. This is when we start making bad statements. We start making proclamations that we can't deliver. And you talk about creating an unhappy customer down the road. I had this problem a lot in my first couple of sales jobs. I didn't really want to be in sales. And my whole objective was just to close the deal and get on with it. So
Yeah.
I was making all kinds of statements, all kinds of claims that the customer couldn't. So here's the whole thing. If your focus is truly in helping the customer and you play the long game, and the easiest way to play the long game is to have a big pipeline. Have a big pipeline. You got to have more stuff in your pipeline. That's the easiest, best way to cure commission breath.
Excellent point. Yeah. Mark, this has been a real great. I know it's been short, 20 minutes. It was concise and to the point, and it flows perfectly into this whole framework of prospecting, and you're wrapping it up beautifully. And I really appreciate your time today.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. And you know what? Sales is absolutely fantastic because we have to go out every day and help people.
Absolutely.
How can we not get jazzed about that?
Right. Okay. Thanks, Mark.
You bet. Thank you.